Grebes are diving waterbirds, feeding on small fish and aquatic invertebrates. A little bit larger than a coot, great crested grebes nest on floating platforms made up of waterweed. It is an excellent swimmer and diver, and pursues its fish prey underwater. The adults are unmistakable in summer with head and neck decorations. In winter, this is whiter than most grebes, with white above the eye, and a pink bill. This species was hunted almost to extinction in the United Kingdom in the 19th century for its head plumes, which were used to decorate ladies' hats and garments. The Royal Society for the Protection of Birds was set up to help protect this species, which is again a common sight. The black-necked grebe breeding plumage features a distinctive ochre-colored plumage which extends behind its eye and over its ear coverts. Uses multiple foraging techniques. Insects, which make up the majority of this bird's diet, are caught either on the surface of the water or when they are in flight. It nests at the water's edge because it cannot walk very well. Its legs are set quite far back along its body. They are also almost flightless for around 9 months of the year, which is much longer than any other flying bird. Palaeolotus was similar in size to a small flamingo at about 80 centimeters tall, but had proportionally shorter legs and appears to have been capable of both wading and swimming in different depths of water. Its straight pointed beak also suggests it had a much less specialized diet than its modern cousins, probably feeding on small aquatic animals like snails, insect larvae, and fish. Various other palaeolotid species have been found all around the world, so they seem to have been incredibly common and successful birds during their time. Flamingos usually stand on one leg with the other tucked beneath the body. The reason for this behavior is not fully understood. One theory is that standing on one leg reduces the energy expenditure for producing muscular effort to stand and balance on one leg. They are very social birds. They live in colonies whose population can number in the thousands. These large colonies are believed to serve 3 purposes for the flamingos: avoiding predators, maximizing food intake, and using scarce suitable nesting sites more efficiently. Flamingos filter feed on brine shrimp and blue-green algae, making them omnivores. Their bills are specially adapted to separate mud and silt from the food they eat, and are uniquely used upside down. The filtering of food items is assisted by hairy structures called lamellae, which line the mandibles, and the large, rough-surfaced tongue. The pink or reddish color of flamingos comes from carotenoids in their diet of animal and plant plankton. American flamingos are a brighter red color because of the beta-carotene availability in their food, while the lesser flamingos are a paler pink due to ingesting a smaller amount of this pigment. These carotenoids are broken down into pigments by liver enzymes. Mating and bonding behaviors of American flamingo individuals have been extensively studied in captivity. The American flamingo is usually monogamous when selecting a nest site, and incubating and raising young. However, extrapair copulations are frequent. The role of osmoregulation, the maintenance of a precise balance of solute and water concentrations within the body, is performed by a number of bodily functions working together. In these flamingos, the kidney, the lower gastrointestinal tract, and the salt glands work together to maintain the homeostasis between ions and fluids. In mammals, the kidneys and urinary bladder are the primary organs used in osmoregulation. Birds, however, lack a urinary bladder and must compensate using these 3 organs. Both James's and Andean flamingos feed their chicks through an esophageal secretion that is regurgitated from the crop of the bird. The difference between the 2 species lies in the composition of the prolactin secretion produced by each bird. Both male and female parents are able to feed the chick. Adult flamingos are the most developed filter feeders of the birds. Of the species, James's flamingo has the finest filter feeding apparatus. All flamingo species are capable of flying. The flight feathers are easily distinguished in James's flamingos as they are the only black feathers on the bird. The entire colony may participate in mating rituals at the same time. The males put on a show by vocalizing and sticking their necks and head straight up in the air and turning their heads back and forth. The passenger pigeon is an extinct species of pigeon that was endemic to North America. Its common name is derived from the French word passager, meaning passing by, due to the migratory habits of the species. The pigeon migrated in enormous flocks, constantly searching for food, shelter, and breeding grounds, and was once the most abundant bird in North America, numbering around 3 billion. They were hunted by Native Americans, but hunting intensified after the arrival of Europeans, particularly in the 19th century. Pigeon meat was commercialized as cheap food, resulting in hunting on a massive scale for many decades. The last captive birds were divided in 3 groups around the turn of the 20th century, some of which were photographed alive. The eradication of the species is a notable example of anthropogenic extinction. The rock dove is a member of the bird family Columbidae. In common usage, it is often simply referred to as the pigeon. The domestic pigeon descended from this species. Escaped domestic pigeons have increased the populations of feral pigeons around the world. Pigeons navigate using a variety of cues, including the Earth's magnetic field, the position of the sun, and visual landmarks. Their homing abilities are still not fully understood. They are known for their excellent memory. Research suggests that they can recognize themselves in a mirror, understand space and time, and remember specific routes and locations. Both male and female pigeons produce a special substance called crop milk to feed their chicks. It's a secretion from the lining of the crop and provides vital nutrients for the squabs. Pigeons are capable of reaching high altitudes during flight. Homing pigeons have been recorded flying at altitudes exceeding 6,000 meters. They have adapted to a wide range of environments, from urban skyscrapers to rural landscapes. Tooth-billed pigeon has a large, curved and hooked bright red bill with tooth-like projections on the lower mandible. Behaviorally, it is unusual among members of Columbiformes in drinking by scooping water up in its bill, in the manner of the great majority of bird species, rather than sucking it up using the tongue as a straw. Because of ongoing habitat loss, limited range, small population size, hunting and occasional cyclones, as well as the likely impact of introduced species such as pigs, dogs, rats and cats, the tooth-billed pigeon is evaluated as critically endangered. Nachinornis was by far the biggest pigeon known from any Pacific island, and one of the largest pigeons to ever live, being almost the same size as the Mauritian dodo at around 90 centimeters tall. But unlike its distant cousin, it still looked very much like a scaled-up normal pigeon, probably resembling a giant version of the closely related modern crowned pigeons. It had reduced wings and strong legs, indicating it was flightless, and an unspecialized beak that suggests it was a generalist forager eating fallen fruit, seeds and invertebrates from the forest floor. The island of Mauritius was formed from a volcanic hotspot in the Indian Ocean about 8 million years ago. The dodo's smaller flying ancestors must have arrived there sometime after that point. The area where its closest living relative, the Nicobar pigeon, is still found today, and finding themselves in an ecosystem completely lacking terrestrial mammals, they quickly evolved to fill a large herbivore niche. Despite often being stereotyped as a slow, dim-witted animal, the proportions of the dodo's leg bones suggest it was actually quite fast and agile. Its brain-to-body size ratio was also typical compared to other pigeons, which are known to be highly intelligent birds, and it had a well-developed sense of smell. Sadly, this fascinating bird disappeared within only a century of being discovered by humans in the late 15th century. Its island tameness due to its lack of natural predators made it easy prey, its forest habitat was rapidly destroyed, and introduced mammal species competed for its food sources and ate its eggs and young. Its loss wasn't even properly recognized until much later, but since then it has ironically become immortalized as an icon of human-caused extinction. The humans were so indifferent to the decline of the species that almost nothing was preserved of them. We only have a mummified head and some bones. At that time, it was unthinkable that an entire species could disappear. Rodriguez solitaire was closely related to the dodo, although it wasn't a direct descendant. It had large lumpy bony knobs on its wrist bones that were used as weapons to clobber each other while fighting. Due to this its wings were less reduced than the dodo, retaining stronger musculature, and it was apparently also capable of using them to create loud low-frequency sounds for communication. It survived for longer than both its dodo cousin and the Réunion ibis, but only because its island was rarely visited by humans until the late 16th century. Once Rodriguez began to be exploited, the story became the same, a combination of hunting, habitat destruction and predation by invasive species rapidly dwindled its population. The chestnut-bellied sandgrouse is sedentary, unlike most species of sandgrouse who are migratory. However, the species exhibits extensive local movements. During the summer, when water is scarce, the birds will move to nearby areas where water is still available. The birds also appear to periodically move over long distances based on the availability of food supplies. The environment these birds tend to inhabit is often arid, and water is scarce. However, these birds water regularly every day and will tend to concentrate around available water sources. They prefer to water once a day at sunrise but have been observed to water a second time before sunset, although this is less common. Large frogmouths are named for their large flattened, hooked bill and huge frog-like gape, which they use to capture insects. The behavior of this bird is not well known. It hunts by night, on the ground and in the canopy, feeding on insects. It roosts by day, perching on a branch or hidden in a hole, singly or possibly in pairs. The nest is firmly attached to a slender branch of a shrub or small tree. It consists of a circular cushion of down on which the single egg is balanced. The egg would fall off were it not for the incubating parent bird, which crouches lengthwise along the branch rather than across it. European nightjar densely patterned gray and brown plumage makes individuals difficult to see in the daytime when they rest on the ground or perch motionless along a branch. The preferred habitat is dry, open country with some trees and small bushes. It feeds on a wide variety of flying insects, which it seizes in flight, often flycatching from a perch. It hunts by sight, silhouetting its prey against the night sky. Its eyes are relatively large, each with a reflective layer, which improves night vision. It appears not to rely on its hearing to find insects and does not echolocate. Although it suffers a degree of predation and parasitism, the main threats to the species are habitat loss, disturbance, and a reduction of its insect prey through pesticide use. Despite population decreases, its large numbers and huge breeding range mean that it is classified by the International Union for Conservation of Nature as being of least concern. The adult male standard-winged nightjar has a bizarre and unusual wing ornament during the breeding season, which consists of a broad central flight feather on each wing elongated to 38 centimeters, much longer than the bird's body. Outside the breeding season, there are no plumage distinctions between the male and female. Like other nightjars, the standard-winged nightjar feeds on insects in flight, the huge gape opening wide for moths and beetles. It flies at dusk, most often at sundown, and can sometimes be seen with flying foxes. No nest is made, the two elongated and elliptical eggs are placed upon the bare ground. The common patou seeks to mimic the perch on which it rests, using a technique called masquerading. Adult and juvenile patous choose perches that are similar in diameter to their own bodies so that they can better blend in with the stump. Most patous choose stumps and other natural materials on which to rest, but some adults have been spotted perching on human-made items. These birds adjust their perching angle to best mimic the stump where they are. The patou sits with its eyes open and its bill horizontal while awake, but if disturbed, assumes an alert freezing posture. The eyes can appear as giant black dots with a small yellow ring, or as giant yellow irises with small pupils due to voluntary pupil constriction. It has 2 or 3 slits in the eyelid so that it can see when the eyelids are closed. These notches are always open. The upper and lower eyelids can be moved independently and rotated over the eye into the desired position so that the bird may adjust its field of vision. The Australian owlet nightjar nests mainly in holes in trees, which is provisioned with leaves by both of the pair. It is thought that the frequent addition of eucalyptus leaves is because they act as a beneficial insecticide. 3 or 4 eggs are laid, and incubated by the female for just under a month. Both the adults feed the chicks, which fledge after a month. The young birds are reported to stay close to the parents for several months after they fledge. During the day they roost in hollows in trees, partly for protection from predators and partly to avoid being mobbed by other birds that mistake them for owls. The relationship between the owlet nightjars and the Caprimulgiformes has long been controversial and obscure and remains so today. In the 19th century they were regarded as a subfamily of the frogmouths, and they are still generally considered to be related to the frogmouths and the nightjars. The ancestors of the swifts and hummingbirds, 2 groups of birds which are morphologically very specialized, seem to have looked very similar to a small owlet nightjar, possessing strong legs and a wide gape, while the legs and feet are very reduced in today's swifts and hummingbirds, and the bill is narrow in the latter. The swifts are a family of highly aerial birds. They are superficially similar to swallows, but are not closely related to any passerine species. Swifts are placed in the order Apodiformes with hummingbirds. Resemblances between swifts and swallows are due to convergent evolution, reflecting similar lifestyles based on catching insects in flight. American black swift breeding habitat is frequently associated with water. The birds most often nest on high cliff faces, either above the ocean surf or behind or next to waterfalls. Hummingbirds have varied specialized characteristics to enable rapid, maneuverable flight, exceptional metabolic capacity, adaptations to high altitude, sensitive visual and communication abilities. Among all birds, male hummingbirds have the widest diversity of plumage color. They are the smallest mature birds, measuring between 7 and 13 centimeters in length. They are known as hummingbirds because of the humming sound created by their beating wings, which flap at high frequencies audible to other birds and humans. They hover at rapid wing flapping rates, which vary from around 12 beats per second in the largest species to 80 per second in small hummingbirds. Ruby-throated hummingbirds are solitary. Adults of this species are not social, other than during courtship. The female also cares for her offspring. Both males and females of any age are aggressive toward other hummingbirds. They may defend territories, such as a feeding territory, attacking and chasing other hummingbirds that enter. They have many skeletal and flight muscle adaptations which allow great agility in flight. Muscles make up 30% of their body weight, and they have long, blade-like wings that, unlike the wings of other birds, connect to the body only from the shoulder joint. This adaptation allows the wing to rotate almost 180 degrees, enabling the bird to fly not only forward but backward, and to hover in mid-air, flight capabilities that are similar to insects and unique among birds. Nectar from flowers and flowering trees, as well as small insects and spiders, are the main food of these birds. Although they are well known to feed on nectar, small arthropods are an important source part of protein, minerals and vitamins in the diet of adult hummingbirds. They show a slight preference for red, orange and bright pink tubular flowers as nectar sources, though flowers not adapted to hummingbird pollination are also visited. The birds feed from flowers using a long, extendable tongue and catch insects on the wing or glean them from flowers, leaves, bark and spiders' webs. Young birds are fed insects for protein since nectar is an insufficient source of protein for the growing birds. Though fiery-throated hummingbird has a small range, its population is estimated to be between 50,000 and 500,000 mature individuals, and the number is believed to be stable. Much of its range is protected in preserves and national parks, and it is considered common to abundant throughout. Like most hummingbirds, the rufous-tailed feeds on nectar and small insects. It is common at sugar water feeders and often seen in coffee and banana plantations. It is extremely territorial and aggressive at feeding sites such as flower patches and feeders, from which it chases other hummingbirds and large insects. The Andes Mountains appear to be a particularly rich environment for hummingbird evolution because diversification occurred simultaneously with mountain uplift over the past 10 million years. Remains in dynamic diversification inhabiting ecological regions across the whole America continent, indicating an enlarging evolutionary radiation. Within the same geographic region, clades coevolved with nectar-bearing plant clades, affecting mechanisms of pollination. Among the largest species of hummingbird, sword-billed hummingbird is characterized by its unusually long bill, being the only bird to have a beak longer than the rest of its body, excluding the tail. It uses its bill to drink nectar from flowers with long corollas and has coevolved with the species Passiflora mixta. To obtain nectar, the hummingbird will stick its long bill down the tube of the corolla, drink, and then retreat and hover for a few seconds before repeating the process. While most hummingbirds preen using their bills, the sword-billed hummingbird uses its feet to scratch and preen due to its bill being so long. It perches with its bill angled upwards to reduce the strain of the heavy beak and improve balance. The length of the bill is so long, it also forces the sword-billed hummingbird to use its feet to groom, even though this takes longer than traditional beak methods. Preening is important to remove ectoparasites and spread oil across the feathers. Like its relatives, the violet-tailed sylph's diet is nectar and small insects. It mostly forages near the ground but does ascend to the canopy. It uses trap lining around a circuit of flowering plants, but males also will defend specific feeding territories. It usually hovers at flowers to feed but often clings to them. It catches insects by hawking from a perch or by gleaning from vegetation. The dynamic range of metabolic rates in hummingbirds requires a parallel dynamic range in kidney function. During a day of nectar consumption with a corresponding high water intake that may total 5 times the body weight per day, hummingbird kidneys process water via glomerular filtration rates in amounts proportional to water consumption, thereby avoiding overhydration. Marvelous spatuletail's signature feature is its 2 outer tail feathers with bare shafts that cross each other and end in large purplish-black rackets or spatules. Little is known about the marvelous spatuletail's breeding phenology. Its breeding season appears to be between December and February but may extend from October to May. Males gather at leks and perform an aerial display. It is known from only 2 general areas and its population is thought to be smaller than 1,000 mature individuals. Deforestation is rampant in its range, though the species' preference for edge and scrubby habitats may somewhat ameliorate its effects. Males are hunted for traditional medicine, as their hearts are believed to be an aphrodisiac. Hoatzins have a distinct appearance with a spiky crest on their head, a blue face and striking reddish-brown plumage. They are often referred to as reptilian birds due to their prehistoric appearance. They have a specialized digestive system unique among birds. They ferment food in a large foregut, which results in a fermentation chamber similar to that of a cow. This digestive process allows them to extract nutrients from the tough leaves they consume. It is primarily herbivorous, feeding on the leaves of aquatic plants. It is one of the few bird species that relies heavily on a leaf-based diet. Chicks possess a unique adaptation known as the stinkbird defense. They have 2 claws on each wing, which they use to climb through vegetation. Additionally, they produce a foul-smelling liquid as a defense mechanism against predators. Despite having wings, hoatzins are not strong flyers. They use their wings more for gliding between trees than for sustained flight. The hoatzins' evolutionary history is somewhat mysterious, and it has been difficult to classify within a specific bird order. Some features suggest a link to early, primitive birds.